Hi, this is Keith Weaver with the Top Executive Strategy Podcast, where CEOs, COOs, and business owners share strategies for better success. This is 6 questions in 9 minutes because the best strategies are concise business advice. And so we're going to get right with our guest today. And with question number one, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Keith. I'm Wes Barefoot and have a couple of businesses. My primary business is my consulting business, Path to Freedom. And I work with people that are interested in getting into business for themselves, or in some cases already in business for themselves, but looking for a way to diversify and maybe add another business to the mix. And I specialize in franchising, and my wife and I own several franchise businesses ourselves. And what I do is simply work with people to help them better understand franchising, see if it may be an avenue that's a good option for them. And if so, then I help match them up with franchise businesses that are likely to be a good fit for them, and then kind of coach them through the investigative process. So that's kind of where I spend the majority of my time. My wife runs our franchise businesses, and we have great teams in place. And those businesses are, for lack of a better way of putting it, to an extent, running themselves.
It's a great way to get into a business when you already have the systems in place and things. So
No doubt, no doubt. That's a big appeal of franchising for
right.
sure.
So question number two, what's the best thing about being a business leader?
Yeah, it's a good question. And this is one that, I think for me has become more relevant over the last couple of years as our franchise businesses have really grown and we've been able to build the teams out. But I think it's just, creating opportunity for other people. We've personally gotten a lot of gratification out of building our businesses and, being able to create good job opportunities for people that are, looking for a way to come in and work hard and earn good money. And so for us, just creating that opportunity for people has been very rewarding. And of course, through that, you're able to coach, train, and mentor the people that work for you. And in some cases, we've had people that have come up with our companies and then gone on to start their own businesses after kind of getting a feel for it and learning more about business through working with us. And that's been a pretty cool feeling.
Awesome. So no, question number three, I hear from other business leaders that a lot of times the people strategy can be far more challenging in their business than the actual business strategy of running their business. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think in any business, unless it's, maybe a sole proprietorship of some sort, I think the biggest challenge is going to be finding and keeping the right people. And as I'm working with people and helping them investigate franchise businesses, and I work with franchise companies across all different industries that are going to have different HR requirements. But I get feedback a lot of times from the people that I'm working with as they're researching different franchises. And a lot of times they'll come back and say, Wes, I think the hardest thing about this business is going to be getting the right people and keeping them. And I say, well, absolutely. I think that's the hardest piece with any business. So I don't think that it's necessarily specific to one industry or another. And, I think we'll get into through some of the other questions, kind of some strategies around finding and keeping the right type of people. But I would agree, it's a challenging aspect of any business.
Well, speaking of that, question number four, what strategy would you like to share with other business leaders?
Yeah, so I think when it comes to, as we just talked about, finding the right people for your team and keeping them, I think about it in three phases: recruiting, training, and mentoring. And a big part of that, and we've learned this the hard way over the years ourselves, I think you have to just absolutely set the right expectations up front. So when you're talking to someone about joining your team, whatever role that may be, it's very clearly communicating the expectations that you have for them in their role. Because if that's not done properly, then you're fighting an uphill battle because the employee or the team member just simply doesn't have a good understanding of what you're expecting from them. And then, the other thing that we talked a little bit about offline, Keith, that I think it would be worth noting that I feel would be relevant for your audience is, as a business owner, and this goes hand in hand with having a great team in place, right? Because as a business owner, you need to really understand what your role in the business is. I see this with small business owners all the time, work with a ton of different franchise companies and franchisees. It happens all the time where the franchise owner or the business owner ends up spending far too much of their time on areas of the business that really should not be their responsibility. They should have team members in place that are handling these aspects of the business. The way I like to think about it is it's the difference between working in your business and working on your business. As a business owner, over time, you need to be spending more and more of your time working on the business and have people in place that you can delegate to that are working in the business and carrying out the day-to-day activities. And with any newer business, it's in all likelihood the business owner is going to have to spend more time in the business, but your long-term goal should be to put the right people and the right systems and processes in place so that the vast majority of your time as the owner is spent working on the business. And every business is going to be a little bit different in terms of what that may look like for the business owner. One of the biggest, I guess, pieces of advice I ever got was from a mentor of mine, Jack Daly. And he talks about this in terms of what he calls HPAs, high payoff activities. So you've got to understand what your HPAs are, and then you've got to make sure you have the right systems and processes in place so that you can spend the vast majority of your time as a business owner working on these HPAs. So again, it's having the right people in place, setting the right expectations with them, and then being willing to delegate to them, being willing to give up some control to the people on your team, which is easier said than done, but it's so necessary to continue to grow and scale a business over time. And then, like, for me personally, time blocking, making sure I've got time built into my calendar to work on my HPAs, because for me, if it's not on my calendar, it's probably not going to happen. So it's getting very clear on where's my time best spent, blocking for that time. But in order to do that, it comes back to team. Like we've talked about, you've got to have the right team in place to give yourself the ability and the flexibility in your schedule to spend your time where you're going to see the strongest return on the investment of that time.
Some great strategies that when you put them all together really make a huge difference in your business. And, my focus as a consultant is a little different than yours, but I work on a lot of those kind of things with my clients. And, the results are huge when they put all those pieces together. So.
Yeah. And it doesn't happen overnight. It definitely takes time and it takes discipline. And we were chatting before we started recording about the book, The E-Myth Revisited. So I send a copy of this book to everyone that I work with that goes on to buy a franchise and start their own business. And I think it's critical reading for any business owner. I try to reread that book at least once a year just to kind of remind myself of where I need to be spending my time.
Well, great. Well, we are getting a little short on time, but question number 5, what other successful business owners, CEOs like yourself, would you like to maybe do a shout out to, or you think would be good on the podcast?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll shout out to a couple of my mentors that have been instrumental in coaching me over my career. Couple that come to mind very quickly: Dave Pasgan, formerly the CEO of 101 Mobility, now the founding partner in Thrive Brands. Another would be Alan Young, former CEO of Shelf Genie, had a very successful exit from that business, and now he dabbles in a variety of investment opportunities these days. But both of those guys have been amazing coaches and mentors for me over the years. I can call them very good friends, and I've learned a lot from them. So definitely glad to have a chance to kind of shout them out.
Yeah, 2 very successful people. And if we have a chance, we'd love to have them on as well.
Yeah, they'd be great.
Question number 6, just kind of a final fun question. Tell me about one of your favorite past bosses.
Well, I'll go back to Dave Pasgan. Worked for Dave for a few years. Now we actually own franchises in the same brand, and are more peers, but he was definitely a boss of mine that I really looked up to, really learned a lot from. But I think more than anything, he showed me the importance of a good work-life balance. Dave works hard, but he also plays hard. He's what I like to kind of jokingly refer to as the most interesting man in the world, because every time you talk to him, he's in a different part of the world doing some sort of a different extreme activity, bungee jumping, paragliding, free diving. So he really showed me what it means to work on your business and not in it, and have the right people in place, which gave him a lot of freedom and flexibility to spend time where he should in his business, but also do things that he wanted to do in life.
That's, a goal that most business owners have, but very few find it because of some of the things that we've talked about.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
great example. Well, it has been great having you on today and talking with you. Before we leave, can you tell people how they can find you or maybe link up with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty active on LinkedIn. So just Wes Barefoot on LinkedIn. My website for Path to Freedom is just www.path, the number two, FRDM.com. And then I actually have a podcast as well, the Path to Freedom podcast. That's available on all major podcast platforms, but that'd be a great way to connect with me. I monitor the comments pretty closely, and the beautiful thing about the podcast is it's not just me. I talk to a lot of other successful entrepreneurs that have amazing stories and amazing advice to share. So definitely check out the Path to Freedom podcast, Apple, Spotify, any of the major podcast platforms.
Well, again, great having you on. And this is Keith Weaver with the Top Executive Strategy Podcast. And for more insights and to follow us, you can follow us at Weaver Business Coaching on LinkedIn. And of course, listen to us on your favorite podcast platform. And we wish you the best success.